you really want to release weight, if you really want to get to that place where your body is starting to call for certain foods, where it's starting to naturally ask for foods, it's starting to tell you when it's hungry and it's starting to tell you when it's full, then you have to understand that whatever you decide to take out of your diet, whatever reward system that you build up in your brain because you have a restriction around certain foods is only going to sabotage your results.
Are you ready to bring your dream body and health into life, but just can't seem to keep the motivation going? And is it finally time to address the self sabotage and the unwanted eating behaviors, such as binge eating, emotional eating, and nighttime eating, that you know are getting in the way of your goals? Do you ever wonder what it would take for you to feel in control of your rituals so that you can stay consistent and see results? Welcome to this week's special Make Peace with Food Minisode on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast, where you'll learn how to overcome unwanted eating behavior and other self-sabotaging habits by shifting your nervous system so that your body works with you instead of against you. I'm your host, Shaban, and with each episode, I am honored to be your coach and guide in the journey to make peace with food and find food and body freedom so that struggle with weight is a thing of the past. When you tune in every Thursday on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast, you'll catch the latest conversation on unwanted eating behaviors and learn how to shift the nervous system, rewire the brain to new patterns, and end the food and body obsession so you finally feel relaxed and no longer confused around food. Now, before we begin, I want to quickly invite you to grab a free copy of my Food Freedom ebook that I have for you at makepeacewithfood.com. And if you find that this conversation resonates with you today, then I also want to invite you to join our free Make Peace with Food Facebook community at myfoodfreedomlifestyle.com, where you can connect with me and my team directly. The links are in the show notes. And of course, if you know somebody who you feel could benefit from these conversations and discussions, make sure to share this podcast with them too. All right, athletes, now let's get into it.
Today, I'm going to be talking about how to release weight and keep carbs and not have to give up your favorite foods, because I don't know about you, but carbs are so important in my life. My God, carbs give me pleasure. And most importantly, they give me energy. They give me fuel. And I know that you probably noticed this too. If ever you've gone on the keto diet, if ever you've gone on any diet that asked you to take out carbs, you probably felt lethargic. You probably felt exhausted. You probably felt lazy, as they call it. And you probably were very hangry also, because that's what I experienced anytime I used to go on these low carbohydrate diets. And, I come from the CrossFit world. And for many, many years, for almost about 10 years, I owned and operated 2 CrossFit gyms. And back in the day, the whole conversation was about eating like a caveman. The keto diet had come in with a vengeance and started to get really, really popular, and especially in the CrossFit world. And all of a sudden, carbs were deemed evil. Carbs were the devil. And we were trying so hard to stay away from carbs. So if this is resonating with you today, if you've tried to take carbs out of your diet, what has been the response? And I always give out this survey where I ask people before I start coaching with them or before I offer them the free coaching call, which I'll be offering you today at the end of this conversation, to find out whether or not your nervous system is behind all of your unwanted eating behavior. But anytime I send out this questionnaire, I always ask, well, what are your beliefs about food? What are your beliefs about carbohydrates? And you know what I hear every single time? Almost every single person has the belief that carbs are bad and we are supposed to stay from carbs. If we want to release weight, we have to stop eating carbs. And again, I don't know about you, but that's definitely something that's never worked for me. It's actually what causes some of that unwanted eating behavior. And it also takes away from the quality of life, because food is one of our pleasures of life. It's the way that we get to experience our taste buds. It's the way that we get to actually experience a lot of connection as well with other people. And if you think about the majority of cultures the basis of their food is carbohydrates, whether that's pasta or bread or rice. The majority of the foods that we consume are carbohydrates. And again, to geek it out just a little bit more, glucose is the primary fuel source of the body, and that comes from carbohydrate. Let's talk a little bit about why removing carbohydrates from your diet, or if that's what you're thinking about, actually leads to long-term weight gain. So if you really want to release weight, if you really want to get to that place where your body is starting to call for certain foods, where it's starting to naturally ask for foods, it's starting to tell you when it's hungry and it's starting to tell you when it's full, then you have to understand that whatever you decide to take out of your diet, whatever reward system that you build up in your brain because you have a restriction around certain foods is only going to sabotage your results. Again, let me repeat this. If you've removed certain foods from your diet or entire food groups, such as carbohydrates, because you have a belief that if you eat them, it's going to result in weight gain, then what you're actually doing is building a reward system in the brain. It's a dopamine reward system, meaning that your brain is anticipating this food. It wants it even more and more badly than ever before. And if you continue to deprive yourself from something that you want, that you desire, you're going to build that reward system. You're going to want it and crave it even more. And then as a result, you're going to find yourself out of control when you allow yourself to consume those foods. In fact, it's going to be on your mind all the time. Then you're going to say things like, oh, I'm addicted to carbohydrates. I'm addicted to sugars. These are the foods that I'm addicted to because I can't stop thinking about them. Whatever you give more energy to, it starts to grow more in your mind. It starts to consume up more space. You start to give it more thoughts, you give it more energy, and it grows even more. And so this also goes for that thought process, that obsession with releasing weight that is connected to a certain food group. And so if you really want to release weight, then you actually have to think about this a little bit less. And now I know you're going to say, what are you talking about, Sherry? The only way that I've kept it in control this whole entire time is because I'm always tracking. I'm always counting calories. I've always known that I should restrict foods or I should be careful with how many carbs I eat. Because in the past, when I didn't do that, then that was the problem. Or I've been doing it for so long, I don't know anything else. And I sure as hell, I'm not going to try. I don't want to know what it would be like to not track my food or not track my calories. But that's exactly the thing. And you may have already heard this quote before. Repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is called what? Right, it's called insanity. So I've been tracking my calories for 10 years, and all I've noticed is I've been putting on more and more and more weight over time. Or I've been removing carbohydrates from my diet and just being really afraid to eat carbohydrates. And over time, all I've seen is me actually putting on more weight over time. Well, again, that comes back to that reward system that you've built up in the brain that I was talking about earlier, that dopamine reward system. And so I think I've shared this in the past with you. Friday night for me, it's this ritual that I've started, and this has kind of been going on this year. It's this brand new ritual that we started at home, me and my kids. We make pizza every Friday night. Like this is now become a family ordeal. It's like a family outing. I make the dough from scratch and I make a gluten-free dough, and then we choose the toppings every single week. And we take about an hour or two to make pizza and then sit down and enjoy it. And so that's a way for me to connect with my kids. There's no way that I want to remove this from my life. And at the same time, I am in the best and most peak shape of my life. And those two can come in hand. And why I'm sharing this with you today is because even when I owned gyms 10 years ago, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe that those two things could coexist. How can you eat pizza every Friday night and also be in peak shape? How are both of those things possible at the same time? Well, that's the thing. If I look back at my life 10 years ago, I was afraid of carbs. I didn't eat any carbs. And if I ate carbs, that would be a vegetable. Or if I ate carbs, it would only be a sweet potato. And it would be a very, very small portion. And I noticed that that was also the time where I struggled the most with unwanted eating, with binge eating. And I've also shared my story with you publicly, and I've shared with you that at first it used to be this little cheat meal that I would have on Friday night, and I would excuse it as a cheat meal. And then that cheat meal would last a couple more hours until it lasted the entire weekend. Because what I had done is over time tell myself that these foods are not available for me on Monday. I'm not allowed to have cookies by Monday. I can't have any bread by Monday. I sure as hell can't have any rice on Monday or potatoes by Monday. I can't have any of these foods on Monday. So it's now or never, baby. And I always went for now. So does that sound familiar? Do you notice that you're starting that behavior? Because anytime we do that, anytime we restrict ourselves, what we're actually doing is building a scarcity mindset. And the scarcity mindset is that mindset that there's not going to be enough, or that we have to do this now because we're not going to get an opportunity later. And when we build that scarcity mindset, then we also trigger that part of the nervous system that is going to turn on that binge response. I mean, I was sitting down for hours consuming quantities of food that, first of all, I had never done in the past. I didn't even think I was capable of. And then I noticed it was becoming this pattern that was on repeat. It was just starting to become a pattern in my life. I'd be very restrictive for a long time, maybe a week or so. And then maybe on the weekend, I would suddenly find myself sitting down in a large quantity of food, eating a lot of the foods that I had deemed bad because they were high in carbs and refined carbohydrates and sugars. And so then when I learned to become more aware of the signals that my body was giving, when I started to introduce some of these foods and allow myself, giving myself full permission to eat everything that I wanted, even the foods that I knew were processed and maybe didn't serve me the most, what I actually ended up doing is building this very close and intimate relationship with my body, with the natural cues that my body gives me. And as a result, I started to notice that I didn't even want the refined sugars. My body actually didn't want that. It didn't actually crave that. It wasn't a body hunger this whole entire time that was craving these foods. It was a mind hunger. And so if you're noticing that you feel out of control around sweets, if you call yourself a sugar addict or a chocolate addict, if you feel like you actually are addicted to certain food, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not your body that has that addiction. It's actually your mind. And you're not addicted to sugar and you're not addicted to chocolate. You are addicted to the dopamine reward. That's the reward system that you've built up in the brain. That's actually what you're striving for. And so if you really want to address this, it won't be through more restrictions. It won't be through more hard disciplines. And it won't be through cutting out more carbs or deciding you're never going to eat it again. The only way that it's actually going to work is if you understand first and foremost is that number one, you have to shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. Your mind has to feel and know and feel safe and relaxed around the fact that this food is always available and it doesn't need it. It doesn't have to be now or never. So number one, you have to shift into an abundance mindset. And the abundance mindset is very much associated with your nervous system. When you're in a scarcity mindset, you are in what we call protection mode. That is that fight or flight response. And you can lock yourself in there if you're in there for a couple weeks or more. So after 14 days, you're already locking yourself into protection mode. So if you want to really shift that nervous system, you have to understand that you have to address those dopamine reward system that you have built up in your brain. And the moment that you shift into the abundance mindset, which is associated with safety mode, and safety mode is what we know as rest or digest or parasympathetic nervous state, you're going to realize, wow, that box of cookie can just sit there for weeks and I don't need it. I'll only actually call onto something when my body tells me it needs it, not my mind. And so this becomes a very beautiful and relaxed place. You feel very relaxed around food. You feel relaxed to be at people's house. You feel relaxed if you're at a buffet. You feel very relaxed when you're at a restaurant. You feel very relaxed when the bread basket comes to the table and you don't need it. It's a very relaxed feeling and you're not always thinking and obsessing about food. And I believe that that is the greatest gift of all. Because the other thing I hear often from those who join our program or who get on the free coaching call that I'm about to offer you is that they always feel like they're thinking about food all the time. There's so much fear about food. And there's so much desire and temptation around certain food. They're afraid to be at a social event when there's certain foods around, especially if they're trying to diet or stay away from those carbohydrates. So number one, you need to shift into an abundance mindset. And then number two, you need to learn to reconnect with the natural cues of your body. So remember, I shared with you that all of this, all of these unwanted eating behavior is a mind hunger. It's your mind giving you signals that you wanted. It's not your body. And we've lost that ability to connect with our body over time when we've started dieting, when we've learned the behavior to use food to regulate our emotions, to cope with our emotions. Once we've learned this, we've also programmed the mind that food makes me feel good. And so therefore, the next thing we need to do is we need to connect with the natural cues of the body. Now, the problem is we can't do this. This is, by the way, called intuitive eating. You may have heard it as intuitive eating. We can't become intuitive with our body when we're locked into protection mode. And this is where I see a lot of people mess this up, because when you're in protection mode, the cues you're going to be getting is eat more cake, Sherry, have another donut, Sherry, finish that entire row of cookies, Sherry, YOLO, come on, it's now or never, let's go. So when you're getting those cues, that's not your body. Your body's not asking for that. Your mind is asking for that. And more specifically, the nervous system state that is dominant, which is protection mode, is the one getting you to do that. So number two, you have to learn how to become intuitive, but that can only happen when you've shifted your nervous system from protection mode to safety mode. In other words, you've shifted from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And now this is something that we talk about in our program. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this topic is because I've been in the health and fitness space now for 25 years. And I have to say and really admit, because I feel terrible when I look back at the last 25 years, that I feel like I've done a massive disservice to so many people. When I first started my career and I was getting people on meal plans and talking about nutrition and restricting a lot of foods, I did a massive disservice to people and to myself by believing that certain foods are really harmful to us in that way, that we had to eliminate certain food groups to achieve the results that we wanted. And I did it all in the name of fitness and in the name of health. But now that I've learned of the consequence, not again on just others that I'm working with, but also on myself, I understand now that the root cause really stems from the nervous system. And so wouldn't you want to know if at least this is what you're going through? And as a gift to you, what I'd like to offer you is a free 30-minute coaching call. It's a free 30-minute coaching call with me. There's absolutely no strings attached. What we're going to do together is we're going to put together a strategy to help you regulate your nervous system. Now, first of all, first thing we're going to do, step number one, is discover whether or not there is a nervous system issue involvement. That's step number one. Step number two, let's put a strategy. How can we shift you from protection mode to safety mode? How can we get you to go from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset? How can we really get you to become more intuitive so that you're not craving all these foods that serve you? Your body knows exactly how much it needs when it needs it and knows exactly when to stop when it's had enough. This is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. Why am I doing this? Because women, I have been there. I know what this is like. I have suffered through this so silently, and I suffered through it as a health and fitness professional. I was on radio stations, I was on TV stations, and I was still struggling with my own eating behavior. And I felt so out of integrity. I felt so inauthentic. So I know what it feels like to feel like you're alone doing this. Like, what is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? And so let's get started. Let's at least know if this is what's going on for you. So again, you've got access to my free 30-minute coaching call. The link is in the chat. If you don't know where to begin, or if maybe the times don't work for you, you can also DM me. I'm always checking my DMs every single day. I'm also going to come back to this thread and check all the comments that you have here today. But remember, you are amazing and you're able to do this. And all I'll ask you to just think about for a moment is the process that you're doing, is the strategy that you're currently implementing working? Has it been working over time? Is it bringing you closer or further to where it is that you want to go? And is it now maybe time that you tried something else and maybe you actually addressed the nervous system and understood that this feeling of out of control has nothing to do with your willpower or your discipline, I feel like you at least owe yourself that much to just at least be curious to discover whether or not that truly is the case for you. So with that, I want to wish you a beautiful rest of your day and remind you that I'm always a resource for you and that you are amazing. And really, you can accomplish anything. If you put your mind to it, you got it. And you do got this. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's Make Peace with Food Minisode on the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast. If this has resonated with you today, I want to invite you to subscribe to the show so you never miss a beat. And if you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, then please share this episode with them. Let's work together to help as many people as possible make peace with food and fall in love with fitness. And by the way, I need to mention that if you rate and review this podcast on iTunes and send over the screenshot to Sherry at sherryshaban.com, you'll receive a $500 voucher to join me at one of my upcoming retreats or to use it in our Make Peace with Food coaching program. And don't forget to visit myfoodfreedomlifestyle.com to join the free Facebook group for more resources. And remember, athlete, you are an inspiration. I cannot wait to hear your story.